Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is another in our series of webinars where we meet with our customers and we talk about some of the challenges that they're facing with their investigative case management approach. We love to get our customers chatting with us about the approaches they've taken, the successes they're seeing with Case IQ, and so on. So today we're actually talking with the Office of the Inspector General of the United Nations, one of our largest global clients. And we're going to be talking about how they've sort of implemented Case IQ to really modernize their approach to case management. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass it over to our panelists to introduce themselves. Arturo, would you mind going first?
Sure. Morning, everyone. My name is Arturo Petraia. I am the investigations assistant. I work in the Office of the Inspector General of a specialized UN agency. We're based in Rome, Italy. Our agency deals with food and agriculture, but the scope of our office obviously is that of internal oversight.
Perfect. And Barry?
Yes, Barry Johnson. I am a customer success manager with Case IQ, and I work with Arturo assigned to the United Nations account. And so, yeah, very excited to be here today and excited to sort of hear more from Arturo about how he's been using Case IQ and the success it's brought, and any tips and hints that he may want to give everybody, I think would be welcome.
Perfect. And Barry, maybe I'll throw it over to you to start off with the questions.
Okay. So yeah, I think it'd be great to start with just Arturo, if you can give us sort of a little bit of background about the agency that you work for and the role your department plays, and then what goals are you aiming to achieve as a department or as an agency?
Sure. So our office, our department, really, the Office of the Inspector General, is an independent office that's tasked with, like I mentioned, internal oversight. And our goals are to help the organization deliver on its mandate, and to ensure that funds are used properly, they're allocated and used as allocated, and protected from fraud. So that's really the main focus of our reviews, is that of fraud prevention and tackling fraud. But then the mandate of our branch in particular has expanded, and so we now look more holistically at personnel conduct and behavioral issues. So we're looking, aside from fraud, we look at standards of conduct, breaches of our operating manual, workplace harassment, abuse of authority, conflict of interest, favoritism, sexual harassment, sexual exploitation and abuse, retaliation. There are really a number of allegations that we receive and that we look into.
Okay. Oh, great. So when you and I have been working together for a while, but so what was happening at the UN and specifically within your area when you started looking for a case management system, and what sort of when you started thinking about the approach to case management, and brought you in line with Case IQ?
So I think our situation is similar to what you'll find across the UN in general. And we have to go back to, I would say, about maybe not 15 years ago, but thereabouts. And our office in particular, the investigation function was really just starting out. It was we started developing the idea that we needed our own investigation branch instead of relying on third-party services. And so it was very, very small at the beginning, and so was our caseload. It was low in numbers, and they were pretty simple issues that kind of overlapped with HR issues. So we also relied on their expertise. But then we quickly realized that there was more demand for our services, and as soon as we made ourselves available to our customers, meaning our personnel, our caseload grew exponentially and has been doing so ever since. We've had maybe 1 year where it's dipped a little, but otherwise we're seeing more and more cases. And really, it's not just a question of volume, but it's a question of complexity. The nature of the matters that we look into are very complex, and we can go into some specifics, obviously, without divulging too much information later. So basically, what we realized, and very quickly, was that we couldn't just use a spreadsheet essentially to keep track of what we were doing. And we started looking around at case management systems, which was a new concept for us. Bear in mind, this is, like I said, a good while ago now. And what we saw, having looked at many available systems on the market, was that the vast majority were intended for either law firms or law enforcement agencies. And so what we would have had to do was to kind of shoehorn our information into systems that really weren't designed for us. Whereas what we found with customer expressions and now Case IQ is the exact opposite. So something that fits our needs, that is tailored to us, that's customizable. And again, we can go into those specifics later. But the point being that we grew from virtually nothing into needing a sophisticated case management system, which we now have.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And your journey is not unlike a lot of our customers that we see that come to us brand new from from using either a file sharing type of setup or an Excel spreadsheet. So I think that's interesting to hear some of the qualities and the features that you were looking for. And I'm obviously thrilled the fact that we were able to win your business and trust and have enjoyed our partnership together. Was there one specific feature or functionality or aspect of Case IQ that you could say really turned the table and said, this is it? Was it, like the configurability? Was it the workflow capabilities? Was it, the ability to have forms and templates, et cetera? Or, what comes to mind?
I mean, it's not really one. So I'll give you two, which is the configurability, as you mentioned. So meaning we didn't have to alter our processes and our workflows. Instead, it was the system that kind of took on the virtual shape of what it is that we do. And secondly, it was the yellowfin reporting tool. So we knew from the start that we needed the ability of reporting on the data that we had, and to use it as a building block for more complex data visualization and presentations. And bear in mind that when we do present our information, it is to the very top management of our organization, because our information is obviously confidential. There are very few players involved in those presentations, and they're all very high level. So yeah, finding that yellowfin within Case IQ could extract the data, compile it, and present it in graphs was obviously one of the deciding factors.
Great, thank you. What was the when you first presented your reports to the leadership team and the boards or whoever are governing your operations? What were their reactions? What what was their thought of this new system?
So in a sense, it was disappointing for us, because their reaction was, "Oh wow, this is so simple," whereas in reality there's still a lot of work that goes into it, into updating cases and making sure that all the information is there, keeping it up to date, then extracting it, compiling it, and preparing a package. But really, that's a good thing, because it means that the end result for them was easy to understand, and almost as though we anticipated what it is that they wanted. So that's been their reaction, and throughout the various committees and conferences that we've presented, it's always been very well received. We always receive acknowledgments and compliments for the quality of the information that we provide. So and we are obviously improving this and expanding this every year. So every time we try to do better.
Great. So when you went with Case IQ, what has your experience been? Not only using the system, you mentioned the reports, you mentioned the being able to put together the yellowfin reports to sort of solidify, justify, quantify your the work that you do. So what was your experience getting started from the time you signed to the time you got, even up to now? Well, I think that would be interesting for the viewers.
Sure. And I think it's important to note that we began using eyesight when it was a relatively new product. So again, we're talking quite a few years ago now. And it was a perfectly fine system that worked for our needs at the time. But then we did push the limits over the years and reached the kind of the maximum of what that could do. So right around the time that Case IQ came out, we were looking for an upgrade, and when we made the switch, we noticed this quantum leap in capabilities. Speed was one of the most apparent ones, and all of the customization possibilities. One thing that does kind of stand out, because it's something that I deal with on a regular basis, is the fact that I don't have to go through a tech support to implement a change or customize and even do some pretty radical changes to our system. I can do it myself as a sysadmin, and that's been fantastic, because it's a huge time saver. Not to mention that we have a user acceptance testing site where I can try things out without fear of messing anything up. And then I can move everything to production without my users even noticing that there's been any sort of downtime. So in terms of efficiency and speed, it's really been impressive.
Great, that's awesome to hear. So for your team, I'll just go back to the point about the configurations. So from my perspective as being your customer success manager, I think you should be applauded from the standpoint that it's a very common story where when you get the system, you see this system where you have all the configurability to it, and that's a lot of times we'll see customers initially say that it's intimidating, that that sometimes it's they're afraid they're not going to be able to catch on to it and be able to make those changes. But I think again, your journey has been very common from the standpoint that you have been able to get up and running and pretty much self-sufficient, where you're making those changes as you mentioned, you're creating those reports. And so that's great to see from my standpoint, because it's always, I want to see my customers be successful. I want to see my customers use the system to their fullest extent, to extract the most value. So I think you should be applauded for that and doing such a great job of the configurations and the creation of various reports. So thank you for that.
And I mean, it's true that the system has huge capabilities, and the configuration aspect of it can be intimidating, because in a sense you're limited by your imagination and your own workflows. But it goes two ways. It can prompt changes within your team, so it can be the system that drives changes within your processes, and vice versa. It just adapts to whatever it is that you're doing. So one thing I would say to anyone either using it now or considering to use it is don't be put off by the apparent complexity, because it's not really. It is quite user friendly. There's a ton of information on Case IQ in terms of articles that cover pretty much all the standard questions that are themselves laid out in a very easy to understand fashion, with quick videos to show you where you're going and to find what it is that you need. And that's how I've been able to configure a lot of these things without having to bother Barry too much.
Arturo, I was going to ask you about the relationship with Barry and how that having a customer support manager really helps you out in working through some of these configurations.
Sure. Before meeting Barry, I mean, we always had a go-to person, someone to contact at tech support. We've never been without an answer, without someone to contact for more than like a half a day. So it's been great, and throughout the various stages, you know, from the very early days of configuration, I've worked with some incredibly talented people that were able to really just read my mind and anticipate my questions and have the answers I needed throughout the very first few months of after go live. So it's been always very, very easy. But then as soon as Barry came into the picture, I was able to contact him directly for any number of upgrades that we've done in the past few months, let's say 6 to 8 months. And Barry will tell you we've been working closely on quite a few projects that are bearing fruit right now. For example, we've introduced a geolocation feature that allows us to display where our cases are located by type of allegation, by administrative region. You know, it's all the information that our stakeholders are looking for. So whenever an idea pops in my head, I'm like, okay, I'll just ask Barry. And again, it's either a one-stop shop where Barry is able to help me configure it on the fly, or else for the more complex or unusual questions, he'll know who to turn to within customer expressions and get me the answer. For example, I don't know how relevant this is, but we had a small technical issue with our legacy system that was generating some notifications for very, very old cases. And I couldn't figure out why these unassigned emails were coming through. So Barry tried very, very hard. We couldn't figure it out. It was just somewhere buried deep in the code. So eventually he turned it over to tech support, and after quite some effort, they were able to figure it out, and we're no longer seeing those, which means we're saving space, we're saving email traffic, all the rest of it.
Awesome.
Great. So I guess what, if you were to give 3 tips, what would be the tips? And you sort of alluded to, one being, don't let the complexity or the apparent complexity intimidate you. But would there be 3 tips that you would give a prospect or a new customer using Case IQ that you would recommend, to set them up for success?
Sure. I think with any of these things, with any of these, whenever you're approaching a brand new system, you want it to be as future-proof as possible. So what I would say helps with that is to have very clear goals and expectations. So before you go into it, know what it is that you want the system to do. That will save you having to kind of figure things out as you go. So I would say before you start, really understand what it is the system that you want to do. Then, throughout configuration and setup, they'll be able to do this for you. But you need to start off with clear goals and expectations. The second thing would be, which is kind of related to this, you need to define your workflows to the smallest possible detail. Things like record keeping, your own reporting obligations to third parties and other stakeholders, your data retention periods. Really try and be as detailed as possible when you're looking at your own workflows, because those will then be built into Case IQ, which once set up, they will make handling a case infinitely easier. But you need to have those details really well defined. Now, the last thing I would say is try to avoid a data migration if possible. The reason I say this is not that it's impossible. I mean, we've done it. We've done it from previous versions of eyesight into Case IQ. I know it's technically possible to do it from any number of other legacy systems. So if you really do have the need to retain that data, it is possible. But it does involve, there are more moving parts, and there is a risk of things not working as smoothly as you would if you were starting out fresh. So if possible, just start clean, and you'll enjoy a system that works much better than anything else.
Those are great, and thank you for sharing those. I would add to like the second one that you had mentioned, where sort of knowing what your goals are, and I think that goes to reporting as well. And I think me and you have had conversations in the past on that. Is really the first step for reporting should be know what you want to report on, and know where it is in the database, right? So understanding within Case IQ where those fields are, and then what's the purpose of these reports. And I think because it's so easy to, I can't stand the phrase of boil the ocean, but it's so easy to just get in there and try to create a report that has all these different metrics and all these different categories, when it just makes your life from a reporting side that much more complicated, and it doesn't need to be. So I think you've done a great job with that, sort of identifying what those needs are, and creating those reports so they are very succinct. If you need to change something, you can go to a report and change that, and it's not having to change a bunch of fields in another report. So no, I think those are great tips. And I guess the last question I would have is, so what's next for your team, Arturo? So you've been using Case IQ, you've been successful at it. The power and the value that can be driven through it. So what's next for your organization and your team specifically?
So our office is more and more under scrutiny by the major stakeholders, and we're expected to intervene in, like I said, more complex cases, which is what we're seeing recently. So we must be able to report and demonstrate on our work, and provide data that is meaningful. So that's what we are going to be leveraging Case IQ for. And so going forward, we want to be able to be more granular with our reports, so more detailed in the kind of data that we extract from our case forms. We want to generate live data dashboards that will be shared with the stakeholders that I mentioned, and really we think that's where a lot of added value will be. So we want to increase the level of detail of our reporting, be able to show it at a moment's notice with anyone who has a right to access that information. And another thing that we are looking for is the integration with Case IQ's portal, so and the telephony service. This is something we hadn't been able to do before. But it's something that we're really looking at now, because we can tell it's going to be a huge efficiency gain for us. So we're looking at the telephony services and the portal, online reporting, everything that feeds directly into our case management system. We can see the potential, and so that's a project for the very near future.
Great. I'm sure we'll have plenty of conversations in the new year on that. So as we move in the new year. So yeah, that's great. Peter, do you have anything?
Yeah, no, that's great, Barry. And I just want to thank Arturo and Barry, both of you, for your time today to share these stories about how Arturo is using Case IQ. It's been great to hear what some of the challenges were that you were trying to address with Case IQ, and how you've really configured it to serve your organization. So really appreciate you guys taking the time here today with us.
And thank you, Arturo. It's been great. So
thank you.
I enjoy working with you, and looking forward to the future.
Likewise. Yeah, I'm sure.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.